Nick. This is a super exciting one. We've been working on this for a very long time at Trustero, and we're very anxious to talk about this thing that we've built. Really excited to have everybody on the line today. I am joined by my friend, Nick Martin. Nick is our Vice President of Product at Trustero. My name is Michael Egerling. I'm Vice President of Marketing at Trustero. And today we are introducing Trustero Intelligence. And I'm going to let Nick do the honors of telling you all about Trustero Intelligence, since Nick and the product team and the engineering team have built it, and they're the best people in the world to do that. But before we get into that, I just want to let everybody know throughout the presentation, there's a few housekeeping things to talk about, and then a few like Trustero promotional things to do. As we always do, if you see something you like here and you would like to go a little bit deeper and talk to us about how you could use the paid version of Trustero at your company, make sure that you don't just go to the website and schedule a demo through here, because we'd like to give you a gift for doing it. We give out these ridiculous Ember mugs. I always talk about how ridiculous they are because nobody needs coffee that stays hot for 24 hours, but you can have that if you like it. We also started giving out these Beats headphones because people really like those. We give them out at conferences sometimes, and people love to have those for airplanes and things like that. When kids cry on airplanes, I have 2 little kids and they cry on airplanes, and so I like to give these out. Makes me feel better. We'll list it again, and then when we send out this deck at the end of the webinar, the link, you can click on that link or click on the image, and you'll be able to schedule a demo through there. So schedule your demos through here so we can give you a gift, and you'll be saving us money on advertising because we don't have to advertise if you just book your demos right here. We are also, anybody who was on this webinar, as promised, is going to get earlier access than anyone else to the free to start version of Trustero Intelligence. So Trustero Intelligence is going to be available very shortly in the paid version of Trustero. That's going to happen first. And then shortly after that, it'll be available for free to start. We're going to prioritize the people that are on this webinar, and they will get access first. You'll also get some additional AI usage if you sign up for that priority list through this QR code. So make sure to do that. If you're an AWS user and you have burn down credits and you want to use those, Trustero is we're great people to talk to, right? You can use those on Trustero. We are premier partners on AWS. We just got into the Global Startup Program. We're really excited about our partnership with AWS. And I always like to mention that we are RG2 accolades because our customers have been really gracious to us and have been giving us just awesome support on G2 and just telling everybody how happy they are with Trustero. So without further ado, we're going to tell you a little bit about who Trustero is for the people who haven't been on one of these before. And then we're going to skip ahead to the good stuff and talk to you about what Trustero Intelligence is, because I think that's what everybody's here to hear about. So Trustero is AI for security and compliance. And so what we've done is we've taken some of the most challenging and time-consuming tasks in GRC, and we've used advanced AI to make those very, very quick and very, very easy. So some of those things that you can see on screen, like conducting audits, solutioning gaps, doing things like design assessments, gathering GRC intelligence, answering security questionnaires, vetting third parties, getting audit ready. We have many tools, and we're going to show those in a second, that help you do those things much faster than you could do in a normal traditional process. And so what we do is we are essentially ingesting your data and outputting some of these faster processes. Nick, why don't you take over from here and tell us a little bit about how this works and a little bit more detail about what we're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Very simply, at high level, you can think about what Trustero does is it takes GRC data in, and that's all the stuff on the left. Take that data in, we organize it, and then we help you get analysis and insights out. So that's what's happening there on the right. And so some of the data sources that we'll pull information from include GRC platforms. If you've got a platform you're already using and that's working well for you, that's great. We build on top of those other platforms to provide insights. We also have what we call receptors. These are our integrations for retrieving data from third-party services that are sources of evidence. We take that data, find it into evidence, and actually route it to the appropriate controls to really help kind of speed up all of the GRC activities that are downstream from there. We can also get information out of document management systems like Google Drive or SharePoint. And then finally, we have this kind of all-purpose escape hatch, upload any file, really any document, spreadsheet, PDF, or even screenshots into our system. and our AI will organize that and help you make sense of it. And then over on the right, we've got a few things that we can do, what we call control assurance. That's really the ability to, if you want to, essentially conduct audits on a daily basis, but we also support milestones along the way. So analyses like design assessments, operating effectiveness assessments of controls, that type of thing. And then we'll help not only do the assessment, we'll describe gaps that may be found and help solution those gaps. The one that we're going to focus on a lot today is the GRC and audit questions. We're going to really lens in on this today and show how our platform helps answer a variety of questions. And then risk assurance is something that we also help with. Yeah. So next slide. Okay. So then this is a little bit of a explainer on how our AI system works. In short, we ingest data, we organize it, like I mentioned on the previous slide. Then our AI can infer certain things and has the ability to answer questions, detect gaps, and they'll ultimately help you monitor your compliance on an ongoing basis and get to that kind of ultimate state of the ability to audit yourself every single day if that's something you want to do. Okay, next slide, please. So we help with a variety of use cases. We're going to dive deep into this one in the middle, this questions and questionnaires bucket today, but we also help with a bunch of other things. So mapping, how controls and policies are related, how controls relate to frameworks. Our AI can help sort all that out. We help with evidence collection. We've got our own curated content that you can use if you want to boost kind of in moving along on your journey. You don't want to write your own policies, and controls. We help you track your overall progress against compliance frameworks. This is the ability to actually use AI to help you audit, and then some guidance pieces here at the bottom. So today we're unveiling what we call Trustero Intelligence. In short, this empowers users to ask GRC questions in plain language and get targeted contextual answers without having to dig through evidence folders, policy binders, past audit notes, or maybe it's even doing queries into IT systems that you have. This system is great at helping you find needles in haystacks. So it can search through piles and piles of data to get you answers with sourcing. And the way it does this is in a chat-like interface. So anybody who's used a chat system, like a Chat GPT or Gemini, this will feel very familiar to you, but it's got some things that make it especially well suited to this GRC domain. So in particular, it has to do with the data that we are able to source, and then your ability to actually configure which data it will go and look at. And so building on that foundation of all the data that we've got in here, we've built this interactive capability that allows you to essentially interrogate all of this GRC data that's in your system and actually have a back and forth dialogue with the system. So that's TI. And that can be kind of abstract. So, it's a very flexible capability. So what we wanted to do today is tell the story through 3 different types of users who we think could get a ton of value out of this. So the first one is IT and DevOps teams who may be looking for compliance guidance. They're not necessarily the compliance experts, but they might own controls or are expected to operationalize controls, make sure they're working, that sort of thing. So we provide some help for those folks with TI. The next one we have is a compliance manager who, among other things, needs to help assess risk and also understand what's going on in the environment. They may, from time to time, need to tap a IT or DevOps colleague on the shoulder and ask them questions. This capability enables them in many cases just to ask the system the question instead and get a very powerful sourced answer. And then the final person we're going to be taking a look at is the cybersecurity compliance analyst. So this is somebody who maybe among the things they need to do is solution compliance gaps. So if there's an issue, they want to know what that issue is, perhaps get some guidance on what needs to be done in order to address that issue. So those are the 3 people we're going to be taking a look at today.
Yeah, Nick, I think we wanted to mention that we don't think this is the universe of people that can use this, right? This is just what we can get to today. In fact, I think we forgot to mention at the top that originally this was our progress report webinar where we talk about everything that we're doing and releasing. And there was 3 other products that we were supposed to talk about today, but there's so many things that TI can do that we're actually going to record the rest of this thing and those 3 other products and put that out after this one, because TI does a lot of stuff, and we wanted to focus on that today. And we're only able to focus on this small chunk because of the breadth of what it can do.
No, that's great. And you're exactly right. These are three people that we think there's really good examples for, which is, and we thought it would be good for this audience, which is why we're going to focus on that. But you're totally right. Can help out other people in other situations. And then, yeah, we just had too many things to talk about to fit in the other stuff. So looking forward to talking about the rest of the exciting things we've been doing this quarter a little bit later on. Okay, let's start here with IT and DevOps folks. So we're going to focus on providing on-demand compliance guidance. There's a few tasks that these folks need to address: collaborating with the compliance team, implement necessary controls and procedures, participate in audits. So we're going to show a few things. We're going to show how somebody can learn about a control or a requirement, get some guidance on how to operationalize the control, help figure out if the control is working or not. And then if it's not, help with remediation. So those are the things that we're going to show off. With that, we're going to hop into a demo account. So I will get the right window shared here. And yeah, so I'll set up first what we're doing in here. This is a demo environment. It's been pre-provisioned with a ton of content in here. So this comes from our curated content set. In this particular account, it's got, as you guys can see, about 200 controls, about 30 policies. It's covering, I don't know, something like half dozen or maybe even a dozen different compliance frameworks. So this is your kind of enterprise scale type example. And in addition, this demo has some things that are, so we did that to make this demo a little bit more interesting. It's no fun if everything is boring and green the whole time. So we put some things in here that we know are wrong on purpose as a way to kind of be able to have a more interesting and fun demo. So I'll now jump in, showing off a couple of things with Trustero Intelligence. So I'll jump over here. You can get to it via this link. It's also available under our Analyze portion of the app. So I'm going to jump in. Just like any other chat system, you've got previous chats over here. What's quite different about us is you can also lens in on particular things, and I'll show you this a little bit later. But for example, like if I only wanted to interrogate controls or even a particular control, I could do that. If I only wanted to look at policies, I could do that. You know, that can be interesting. If I wanted to answer questions, for example, about what I'm doing in theory, right, which is what the policies are. And let's say I wanted to see what's actually happening, I could limit it to just looking at evidence. And then here in the middle is our chat window. So let's pick up with our IT and DevOps users and start with DevOps. And we're going to just ask an open-ended question. So I'm going to have it start out here by telling me about access management controls. And so I say, ask some really broad question here, and it'll think on it a little bit. As you guys can see, it's got all of the context included here from the other parts of the system. And then it comes back and it will start talking about all the things that are going on in this account. And so you can see your organization has a robust access management structure controlled by stringent identity and access management policy, IAM policy, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I would expect from an account like this. If we're going to be meeting PCI, HIPAA, ISO 27001, et cetera, you'd figure that you have a lot of this stuff in place. And indeed, it comes back and explains how you're doing that. And you can see here, this ensures adherence to comply with frameworks like HIPAA and SOC 2. And then the other thing that's pretty cool about this is it's going to cite its sources. So you don't just have to take its word for it. It's going to say what it leaned on in order to come up with all of this content that it had up here. And so you can see, for example, it's referencing an access control rules control, user access authorized by management control, privileged access rights control, on and on. And if I click on this, it'll actually open up in a new tab and take me over, and I can see the various controls that are present.
Nick, I should say that actually site sources was one of the things that we were going to show in this webinar that we couldn't fit in. So it is nice that we're kind of dovetailing into it here and showing a little bit.
Yep, exactly. Cool. Okay, so that's the first one. So tell me about this. let's say we want to go a little bit deeper. And I know I've got a controlling system. Let's say in my role, I actually might be accountable for this control. So I'll start by asking a question. Hey, what's the control objective of this control? And it's going to come back and it's going to tell me I've got a control. It's titled secure authentication to implement strong passwords and multi-factor authentication for accessing critical information systems, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can actually see it's citing, that IAM 06 control. If I continue along in this vein, I can say, okay, great. Well, how do I go about operationalizing that control? And now it's going to take into account various aspects of this system, including not just the control itself, but also the systems that we rely on. And so it knows a few facts about this organization. And so it's going to recommend things based on that. And it's going through explaining itself, so implement strong authentication policies, mandatory MFA, configuration enforcement and monitoring. And it's going to be pretty extensive in terms of what it recommends here. So that's a little bit from the DevOps user's perspective and some things that are important to that person. So I'll transition here to doing the next portion of this, which is something from the IT side of the house. Let's do a question about MFA. Speaking of MFA, which came up in the last one. Do all users have MFA enabled for primary systems? And so this is one where you don't know for sure what's going on, but what you'll see is happening here is it's actually going to go and look at the evidence that's in the account. And so it's saying, based on Google Workspace user list titled such and such, it indicates that MFA is enforced for the majority of users. However, we've got some problems in here, and it's going to highlight what those are. And then again, citing its sources down here and telling us how it came to that conclusion. And then, so now I've found that I've got a problem and I want to do a follow-up. And so I say, okay, what are the steps to mitigating the risk that not all my Google Workspace users have MFA enabled? So how can I address this? What are some things that I can do to take care of it and give me some concrete steps I can take in order to fix this? And this type of thing, as you guys can see, the TI is very light on speed and very quick in terms of having its responses. And, for somebody who's, say, a little bit junior in the organization, or even somebody who just wants to have their thinking double checked or make sure that they're covering their bases, this can get you very actionable, specific feedback on your environment and things that you should be thinking about very, very quickly. So it really helps kind of accelerate some tasks, which can be really time consuming at times. So that's, I think, it on the IT and DevOps side. So I'll stop sharing here.
Okay, I'm taking the screen back and I'm going to advance the slide.
Michael, you're muted.
Am I muted now?
You sound good.
Okay, sorry. I didn't realize that the light being on meant I was unmuted. New mic. Okay. All right. So let's take a quick question break here before we move on to compliance managers. I had a great question. It comes up all the time. So what's our hallucination rate, Nick, and why? And, I started to answer. I said, it's extremely low because of TrustGraph and what we have patents in. So can you tell us a little bit about TrustGraph and what that does to keep hallucination low in Trustero?
Yeah, for sure. So like Michael mentioned, we have what we call TrustGraph, and that's what models all the interrelationships between all these different objects in the compliance system. One of the things that we do is we purpose built this pipeline that's behind all this chat capability that you're seeing to make sure that we are retrieving actual facts from the documents that are referenced. So we have a whole system we built for that lives outside of any large language model. And so large language models are getting better at this, but for a time they were kind of notorious actually for hallucinating things. So what we do is there's a whole bunch of work we do on our side to actually ground truth everything that's happening. so that the LLM doesn't have an opportunity to hallucinate because we're basically feeding it a ton of the data. So if we don't feed it to the LLM, then it doesn't have the opportunity to say much. So that is in part what keeps our hallucination rate super low.
Awesome. Thanks for covering that, Nick. Okay. You want to go ahead and move on to compliance managers?
Yeah, let's do it. So the next person we're going to take a look at is compliance managers. And so, for these folks, we can add a multifunctional AI assistant. And so the kinds of things that these folks have to look after: internal audit, evaluating existing security policies and procedures, reviewing configs, identifying gaps and vulnerabilities, monitoring systems for compliance, and tracking remediation efforts. And so what we're going to show here for this person is how they could actually do a portion of a regulation design assessment. So basically looking at the policies that are in this environment and say, hey, how do I stack up with this other framework? They can also use it to understand the state of their environment. And then they can also use it to assist with gap analysis. So I will jump back in then to the demo environment and we'll show off that part. Okay, so I'll start a new chat here for this person. And we'll start out by answering a couple of questions that would kind of show off how we can do a design assessment. There's another way we do this as well, but I'm showing you guys this in a very bite-sized fashion, but we have a way to actually do this in bulk and very quickly. But this, I think, helps really illustrate some of the power and what the system can do. So some of you all may be familiar with a regulation called FFIEC. If a organization was trying to figure out, hey, do I comply with that? What they would do, and we can assist with this, is they would ask questions like this. So does the accounts policy set cover explaining to employees that they should not use unsanctioned IT resources, rogue or shadow IT, in accordance with FFIEC section blah, blah? And so this is the start of doing a design assessment. How do we stack up against this set of requirements for FFIEC? And this will help us understand, hey, how far away am I from being in compliance with FFIEC? And just like we've seen before, it will go and thoroughly address the question. It says the company has policies that address several aspects of acceptable use, security, and compliance. However, there's no specific mention of policies explicitly covering the prohibition or management of unsanctioned IT resources, also known as rogue or shadow IT. In alignment with this, the acceptable use policy broadly outlines some stuff, but basically it's saying, yeah, you don't have something that covers this specifically. So if I were doing a design assessment on this aspect of FFIEC, I'd probably note this down as, okay, looks like we have an opportunity to address this, tighten that part of our policy up, specifically cover that part of the policy to make sure that we're covering that. Here's another example of a question like this that we could ask. We're asking a question about encryption and making sure that the encryption is commensurate with the sensitivity of the information. And like you might expect, again, because this account has so many different InfoSec controls and policies in place, you can see that it covers implementing encryption that is commensurate with security, etc. And then it goes on to explain effective use of cryptography, rules that determine the type, strength, quality of the algorithms, etc. And then once again, it's going to cite its sources here and tell you, yeah, there's stuff in this policy and this other policy that cover that. So that's how somebody could do some work to help start a design assessment. We also have a capability to ask questions in bulk, and we actually offer up these types of design assessment questionnaires so that somebody can actually do a ton of these in a short amount of time. So think asking hundreds of questions like this and getting answers back, in 30 minutes to an hour, which in our experience is incredibly fast for this kind of work. It can often take hours per policy just to evaluate whether a policy is in compliance with a particular regulation. So with this capability, we can actually answer questions like that in minutes. Okay. So I'll move on then to another question. So understanding the state of the environment help make decisions. So in this case, I'm going to ask a question about how we're doing on the aspect of our HR compliance. So have all required employees had a background check within the SOC 2 Type 2 review period. So have we actually done what we're supposed to do in terms of the background checks on hire? And you'll see here, yes, all required employees have had a background check within the review period. And it goes on to explain a bunch of details, including a policy. And it also cites a particular piece of evidence, and so this is a demo environment here, but you can see, yep, here's all the background checks. Here's when it started. Here's when it was completed. So it's able to find that for you. So in here, I can actually click on this piece of evidence and ta-da, here it is. I can see here's all the people. Here's when, the background check started. Here's when they completed, et cetera. So answer questions like that. And then one more for our compliance manager. Now, I think this is an interesting one. Depending, there's all kinds of routes into compliance. People have different backgrounds. And so I think from the compliance person standpoint, this is often how a question like this would be worded. So are any of our network settings too permissive compared to our requirements? So really kind of taking compliance view on it is this meeting our compliance requirements? And so we'll ask a question that's phrased that way. And then we'll see here in a moment the way somebody else might ask a similar question. It responds with, yes, there are indications that some of our network settings might be too permissive compared to our requirements. Specifically, there are unresolved issues regarding AWS network configuration security gaps, such as the use of anywhere ingress rules, which should not be allowed according to security policies. This was highlighted in an issue. Our system also can evaluate all kinds of evidence. So in this case, it's a screenshot, and you can see, okay, we've got some AWS network config stuff going on here. We got a VPC, and we've got ingress rules that are saying allow from anywhere. And so the system was able to pick that up and say, yeah, that's not going to work. You need to tighten up some stuff there. So that's the kind of the level at which a compliance type person, compliance manager type, would be able to ask a question and get a answer that's phrased in a way that is directly answers that question. So that's what we've got for the compliance manager.
Okay.
And then one slide for it. There we go. Okay.
Yes.
So the final kind of person that we're going to take a walk in this person's shoes is our cybersecurity compliance analyst. So this person, they need to do things like discover potential issues within architecture, investigate compliance violations. So discovering potential issues within the architecture, interrogating a document, and then investigating compliance violations that are going on. So I will show you guys that. Where the hell? There. Pick the right window again. Okay. So for this person, again, we'll start a new chat. And I thought this was kind of cool. So discovering potential issues within the architecture. Now, this person is a little bit more technical, a little bit more hands-on. So they're going to say, do any of my VPCs, so virtual private clouds, networking infrastructure, virtual infrastructure that's over in Amazon Web Services, have any unnecessary ports or protocols enabled that could allow in unwanted traffic? So it's a very similar question to what our compliance manager asked, but worded in a more technical way that perhaps a security person would ask it. And then what you'll see is the answer it'll give going to be very similar kind of answer, but again, phrased in a way that is more technical. So, based on the provided context, the security configurations for VPCs demonstrate that some ports and protocols could potentially allow in unwanted traffic, for instance. And then it's going to detail this. It's noted that VPC 03 allows RDS from anywhere, which does not enforce least privilege, et cetera, et cetera. Then it's going to talk about VPC 4, which also has other horrible stuff happening. And again, it's going to cite that evidence that we saw before as the ultimate source of truth of how it came to that conclusion. So, it's really kind of phrasing the response, to the audience in the way that the question was asked in order to make sure that it's being as directly responsive to that question as it possibly can. So that's a pretty cool example of how it's able to kind of tailor its message based on how it's asked. Okay. So next one we're going to show off is the ability to interrogate a document. And this allows me to talk to you guys about a feature that's pretty cool that we've got in the platform. So you can actually, in addition to all the policies, controls, and evidence that's in the platform, you can also add any arbitrary document that you want and ask questions of that document. And so we call those knowledge-based documents. You can get them into the platform. And then in this case, I happen to upload the SOC 2 TSP 100. So this is the SOC 2 standard. This also allows me to show off kind of a cool feature where I can include or exclude different content. And in this case, I want to make sure that I'm lensed in just on the SOC 2 TSP 100. And what you can see over here is, okay, all the knowledge-based documents are included. And then we've excluded all this other stuff. So none of this other stuff is included in here. And I can ask a question, which is kind of a fun one. Is pen testing required for SOC 2? And the interesting thing is, if you ask this question of just a regular LLM, like a Chat GPT or something like that, it'll typically tell you, yes, pen testing is required. However, as we see here, pen testing is not explicitly required by the SOC 2 framework, but it is recommended. And it goes on to explain that basically there are things that you can do, evaluations you could conduct in a very common way to do that is with a pen test. I think this is kind of a cool example of it can give you a very technical, accurate answer that general purpose systems may miss. And really, you can use this to interrogate any document that you have. It doesn't have to be even limited to GRC. You can ask all kinds of questions. So that's a pretty powerful capability as well. And so getting answers like this in seconds is something that's able to do. I'll get to for you guys. So this is about investigating compliance violations. We've got a control in here about managing temporary files. And so I can ask a question like this: were any temporary files not deleted properly? And I think you guys probably all get this by now. It's going to comb through everything. It's going to look through evidence and controls, et cetera. And it's going to find these compliance needles in haystacks. And in this case, it's saying, yes, there were instances where temporary files were not deleted properly according to, and then we've got a couple of pieces of evidence that show things were not done. You can see where it says here, the temporary files had a status indicating that action was not completed, such as no action taken, failed, delayed, or unknown. And it goes on from there. If I open up one of these pieces of evidence, you can see that I think it's actually over in the other one. I think it's in this guy. Yeah, here it is. So you can see the status: failed, unknown, overdue, delayed. So it's highlighting that, yep, there was some stuff that was supposed to happen. It did not happen. And so it gives you that feedback. Is it for the questions I'm just going to show off?
Okay, lovely. Just making sure my mic was on. I think there's two things to mention that I was noticing, Nick. I think we talked about this last time, and I was answering questions furiously, so I don't know if you had already mentioned this at one point, but I think people always ask, we like to show, when we do demos and when we show these webinars, we show a lot of spreadsheet evidence because it's easier to show. But most of the time, we're ingesting data from receptors and from, your AWS, from Checker, from all sorts of different data sources, like Nick showed much earlier in the presentation. That doesn't show as well in a webinar. Like, it's harder to show it. It's harder to show people failing tests and things like that. So it's one of the reasons we show that. There was another question earlier I wanted to follow up on. The one about hallucination. I think it was a point that we didn't make is, it's hard to prove how good a product is at not hallucinating. I mean, we can tell you all we want about how great it is. But one of the great things about creating the site sources feature that Nick and the team have just released is that you can check the work. And then that's something that Nick and his team are constantly talking about, is creating more rigor in Trustero is super critical. And if we want to be the leader in this space and be a leader in AI and helping, GRC professionals do their work faster and allowing you guys to count on AI, there has to be more rigor and we have to be able to show our work. And so that's what Site Sources is all about, is allowing you to be able to trust this thing to work faster for you. So that's how you would, make sure that the thing's not hallucinating. I think we've answered all of the questions. I think we have a couple of minutes left. So if there's any other questions, now is the time to get them answered. So I think I see a couple more questions getting asked, so we'll get those answered probably live. So again, if you like what you saw and you want to see more of what Trustero can do, again, just make sure you use the QR code or when we send out this, we're going to send out this webinar recording here probably within the next 2 or 3 hours. We have to wait for the recording to come from our webinar provider, and then we will send it out to you in an email. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues, share that with whoever you like, share it on LinkedIn. We would love that. We are a newer company, so we'd love to have you guys help us spread the word about what we're doing. Use the QR code so we can send you a gift. We don't have to send the money to Google to tell everybody about Trustero. If you want to try out the free to start version of Trustero Intelligence, just make sure to sign up for the priority list automatically, but we're going to send you an email when it's ready so that you can sign up first, and we'll also give you an increased amount of usage above and beyond what we're going to give everybody else to say thank you for coming and supporting us on this webinar today. So if you are interested and you do want to try it out, or if you have any interest whatsoever, do sign up using that QR code. And when we do send out this deck, you'll just be able to click that little green box over there and that'll take you to it. Last but not least, we're going to be exhibiting at RSA in San Francisco at the Moscone Center in a little less than 2 weeks. And so if you're there, we would love to say hi. We bought a laser. And so if you want to come over and get some stuff lasered, like maybe we can make you a cool mug, or we can laser something that you own, like your wallet or your iPhone case. Actually, we'd love to do that for you. So come over and say hello to Trustero. We'll show you a little bit more in depth what the product does and some of the things that we're building. So we'd love to talk to you. We're at 6382. It is in the North Hall. So come say hello to us at RSA. We love meeting people and talking to you about AI for GRC. I think we got all of the questions answered. If you have other questions, we haven't got the ones with attached to sharks. The Dr. Evil laser was too expensive. And so maybe when we get our next round of funding, we got a new webinar platform with gifts available. It was worth every penny. So come see us at RSA, sign up for our priority list. We'd love to see you guys there. Thank you so much for joining us. Nick, thank you for preparing and presenting, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks a lot.